Hi, my name is Carol Coleman. I'm at Tansy Lane Herb Farm in Albert Mines, New Brunswick. I have been on this property, this farm, for 23 years. But I discovered not too long ago that my family has been here since 1770. I had thought we were in the mid 1800s. First of all, confession, I'm not a herbalist. For 25 years, I have devoted my time to studying medicinal and herbal plants. Now I am about to begin my formal herbalist training to fill in all of the gaps, and it's a 900-hour course. I would like to explain to you a schedule of workshops that I have made for us. I'm going to call it Growing and Using Plants for Healing, Your First Line of Defense. This is a series of online information sessions that will take you from planning, growing, and foraging plants with medicinal properties to administering safely to your family. So the first one we're going to do today, which is going to be medicinal gardens. The second one, I'm going to talk to you about the handiest medicine you have, and that is your backyard medicine that you're probably overlooking. The third one, we will talk about herbal teas, how to use those plants that you have grown or foraged in herbal teas. In the fourth session, we will look at tinctures and glycerides, how to make them and use them safely. And the fifth one is going to be how to use salves and how to make them. So it takes you right through the whole session. When people come to my Tansy shop, they see a large photo of my great-grandmother Margaret, and they ask, was she a herbalist? I say, no, she was a mother. Here on the Fundy shore, she gathered the wild plants to make the medicine for her children. Our forefathers brought over the seeds from the old country. Sometimes they were sewn into the hems of the garments, and sometimes in the hooves of the animals, accidentally. And there would have been plants that she wouldn't have been familiar with, but I'm sure that the First Nations women here would have shared with them. And I would have done anything to visit or witness that first encounter that they had. So great-grandmother Margaret taught her daughter the medicines, who then taught my mother, who then got me started on the journey. Another angle of interest came from my father, who was a lover of wildflowers and would become overjoyed at finding a lady's slipper, or his specialty, a four-leaf clover. This was often in the woods while he was building his log cabins. And so the time has come to start sharing some of the knowledge I have gained over the past 25 years in hope that others will join my journey. It has taken a long time and a lot of thought as to how to approach the topic of medicinal herbs for those who are just venturing in the area. So I would like to ask, why do you want a medicinal herb bed? There can be two answers that I can think of. One is for the garden, just for the knowledge of what would be in that garden. My friend Lydia is always saying to me, Carol, what is that plant and what are you going to do with it? And my answer is often nothing. I want to have it there for the knowledge of its use in the past because it's an important part of our heritage. And then, is it native or introduced? Many plants that we call native were actually introduced from various parts of the world and been here for so long that we call them native and we think of them as that. I call my business Tansy Lane Herb Farm because tansy was one of my mother's favorite plants, and I thought everyone would know it. All of Moncton is surrounded by tansy in the summertime. From Hillsborough to Moncton, the roadside is white with valerian in July. It may not be overly important that very few people can recognize these plants, but I feel it's a symptom of our disconnect with nature. So the second one may be that you want to grow medicinal plants to make your own medicine. That's wonderful. It can be the start of a journey that will bring you close to nature. But this journey must be taken with great care. Each plant has herbal actions, and in the herbalist field, there can be as many as 52. I have seen one plant that had, I believe, 32 herbal actions. Some only have a few, while others have many, and they're the valuable ones to have in your inventory. So there are a number of things to consider when you are wanting to grow plants for medicine, other than just how to grow them. First of all, what is its medicinal use? Why? Like Lydia says, what are you going to use that for, Carol? What part of the plant do I use? Good question. When do I harvest it? Do I use it fresh or dried? What product will I make with it? How do I make that product? Another really important one, is it the best herb for the desired action? Because a plant has that property and that action, it may not be the best one for it. There may be one much closer, much easily obtained to do that. And then how do I administer the product? And the thing that is always of great concern is what precautions must I be aware of with this plant, especially when you are taking certain medications. So I recently watched a couple of YouTube videos on medicinal plants. The information on the identification of the herb and how to grow it is absolutely excellent. But then I start wondering about questions 1 to 9. Without that information, you can cause harm to yourself and to others. So let's take a look at 10 medicinal plants that would be beneficial. Oh, I don't know if I did 10, to have in your garden. But first of all, just in terms of making the garden, you don't need a separate bed, go out and make and plan and everything. Herbs and vegetables are great companions, and I have a chart on that of which boosts each other. Just have an email request if you'd like to have that chart. One thing you have to do is consider the mature size of the plant. When I had my large gardens, I had all the plants up there so that people could come and look and go, oh, you mean this little one I just bought from you is going to be this size in 3 years? That's kind of important to know. Give them sun and rich soil. They are not really all that fussy. You can put them in your perennial bed. You can put your tall ones at the back, small ones at the front, a border of time. It's wonderful. We'll do a session on that later. And consider the climate and the zone. And that is why I'm doing this for our zone here in New Brunswick and our climate, because I've seen some videos lately advertised in our area that are coming from, the mid to southern states, and that information just isn't applicable here. So New Brunswick, we're good. So here is one of my all-time favorites. This is your bergamot, your bee balm. I want to say first that when you start gathering your information on the plants, it's good to have a format that includes all those points that we talked about, how to grow and to use them. So this format is called Materia Medica. Oh, doesn't that sound exotic? We can call it plant profiles. I probably have 150 in my binder, and I can't keep all that information in my head, so I rely on my binder. Because when I start gathering, And I have so many and so many things are ready to use at the same time. I'm like, oh, let me see. Is it the root? Can I use the leaves on this? Anyway, that's why it's good to have these to just to be able to refer to with your information. So the first one is our bee balm or bergamot. The first thing I put down is the common name and then the Latin name. Always, always, always look up the Latin name if you don't already have it. It's very, very important to know that, especially if you want to know specifically the different kinds that you want to have. Guess what? Bee balm's native to North America. And then I always put down annual, biennial, perennial so that you can plan what you're doing. And it is a perennial. Do you need to buy the plant? Do you need to buy the seed? Do you need to wildcraft it? Can you find it outside? There is a wild bergamot, but most of us either start inside or start outside, a very easy plant to grow, or buy the plant. When you plant it, don't plant them closely together. They need space in between, because if they're too closely together, they will get mildew. And especially if you have a place where it's hot and there's not a lot of breeze blowing through. So please take care of that. But nothing worse than having a patch of moldy, mildewy bee balm that you can't use. And the nice thing about it is you can plant, you can harvest the flowers and the leaves. And of course, you harvest it when it is flowering. So I just copied down a few of the herbal actions of the bee balm. It has 15. These are ones that we are probably familiar with: anti-inflammatory, antifungal, antiseptic, antispasmodic. Isn't that wonderful? That covers most of the things that we would use it for. The use that you can do is, well, first one is teas. My famous Earl of Bees tea is made with a nice black tea and my own bergamot. Everybody loves that one. Then you can use it in tinctures, infused honey, and infused vinegar, and an oxymel, which is very popular around here. And that is organic honey, local honey mixed with organic apple cider vinegar and the bergamot. You'll never get sick if you take that starting in the fall. These are the precautions for it, that you really shouldn't use it during pregnancy or if you're breastfeeding. And that goes for many plants. A great deal of caution needs to be taken. And I read that Monarda, our bee balm, combined with valerian, can cause vomiting. Well, that's not good. So let's not do that. Okay. A second one is everybody's favorite, lavender. Look at those bundles of lavender I made from last year's lavender. I put this one in because it shows the two different kinds, or two of the different kinds. I find they smell quite the same to me, but one is Hidcote and one is Munstead. One will have a grayish tone to it, and the other is the vibrant color. There are actually 30 species and hybrids. It comes from Europe, Mediterranean, Southwest Asia, Southwest India, everywhere but here. I was actually watching a video last week from New Zealand, I believe it was. And around this house, it was like 5 feet tall. It was absolutely amazing. So here's the important thing about lavender when you're growing it. Depending, is an annual, biennial, perennial, depending on the variety. In zone 5, Hidcote and Munstead are your most reliable ones. Start with them and then branch out a bit. You can also go into microclimates. But So many people that can't grow lavender, they can't grow lavender. And I say, well, it's probably because you're going to the nursery and buying one that isn't hardy in our area. The tallest with the biggest buds and everything treat as annuals, and they can be very expensive and they won't live, not your fault. So the only thing I say about growing them is they don't like wet feet. They actually like it hot and dry. Don't plant it in a place where there's going to be water around it. People like to plant up against their house, but you're likely to have drainage coming off your roof. So that's just not a good idea. So you can start them from seeds. Some will actually come quite nicely, some from seeds. I always recommend that if you haven't grown a plant before, buy the plant first. Buy a small plant. See what its characteristics are, what it looks like as it is growing. Then when you have that knowledge, start from seed. Then you'll know what to expect. The medicinal parts on the lavender are the flowers, and you can start to harvest them when they start to bloom. They have a fairly short window to get the really vibrant ones at the peak stage, like in that first slide that we saw. Often a week to 10 days. So you have to get out there and harvest quickly and very methodically, because you really need to harvest one stem at a time. So it can take a long time, but of course it's worth it. It has 7 actions, including some of the ones with nervine, meaning, excuse me, calming, antispasmodic, antibacterial, antidepressant. I think we could expect that one, couldn't we? Again, in teas, I have a tea called Lavender Blue Balm, which has the lavender in it along with rosemary and mints. And it's very calming, especially in the evening. Tinctures, salves, lavender salves, infused oil, and a glycerite, which we'll talk about when we talk about tinctures in another session, which is basically a way to administer the medication for those who cannot tolerate any alcohol. So this precaution would make sense, wouldn't it? That precaution, if you have medications that might cause drowsiness. So that makes sense. You don't want to have compound things, only one thing at a time. Look at this patch of chamomile. By the way, all the photos in all the presentations that I do are from my gardens, all of them. If I ever had to use another one, which I think I might, I'll tell you. Other than that, look at that lovely patch of chamomile. So there are 2, the German chamomile, which this one is, and it grows, almost a foot tall. That whole patch was. It's native to southern and eastern Europe, and it's an annual. But it's so worth it, and it's so easy to grow. You can buy your seeds and plant it outside. I wouldn't recommend buying the plant. It's just too easy to plant it outside. The medicinal parts in this are the flower heads. And they're so easy to pick off because you just put your fingers around the top and just pull up and it snaps right up. And you're going to harvest it when it's flowering, of course. You can use the leaves that are with it too. There aren't as many leaves as there are flowers, which is kind of rare in a plant, but use them too. So it has 6 herbal actions. One, of course, is that relaxing nervine, antispasmodic, which makes it really good for stomach problems, and anti-inflammatory, the same thing. So you can use that in tea. I mean, everybody's heard of chamomile tea, right? Even Peter Rabbit had chamomile tea. You can make infused oils, a tincture, and a soap to put on sores. So you would think, well, can't be many precautions with that, but do not take when you're taking blood thinners. Exercise caution with contraceptive drugs, estrogen pills, and sedative medications. So if you're going to use this, look carefully into that, but it's probably not a concern unless you're drinking 10 cups of tea a day. And beware if you're allergic to anything that is in basically the aster family. Lemon balm. I'm going to skip over that part. Lemon balm, I don't know, for some reason, I always hesitate in harvesting it. So it ends up going like this with those flowers. It goes to that quite quickly. But here's our smaller one. It's so easily to identify because of all those tough and rough looking edges. And just rub one of those leaves and you'll be in heaven. A lot of people call it by its name, Melissa. And it's really important to check those names as you're doing them because, some of them can have so many names in different parts of the world or depending who you're talking with. It's native to Europe and it's a lovely perennial. You can set it out by seed or it's easily to divide. So if you know anybody that has a nice big patch of lemon balm, just ask them for some. Oh, and that reminds me of a friend who came and said to me, do you have any mint to share or lemon balm? I said, sure. So I went and gave her some of each. I think it might have been 2 years later, she called and said, do you remember when I bought that from you? Yeah, I have a whole backyard full of it. And I went and I couldn't believe, I laughed and I laughed because she had enough lemon balm to do a whole medicinal factory. Plus, of course, the mint. But it usually won't do that. It doesn't do that in my gardens. And I can never have enough anyway. So the medicinal parts are the aerial parts. So you can use the leaves and the flowers. It's mainly the leaves that we want for the medicine. And when to harvest before flowering. See, I didn't do that in that other photo. Didn't get that done. The herbal actions, they actually have 9. And these are some of the ones, again, you'll see them repeated over and over that we want to use them for. There's antiviral, antispasmodic, antidepressant, antioxidant. Oh, and there's the nervine. You can use them in teas. I use the lemon balm and the chamomile in the kickback evening tea. You can use a tincture of the lemon balm. It has really become known lately of its great properties in helping with sleep. So I have started to use it with a mixture of other things like hops and lavender for helping with sleep. You can use an infused oil and you can make an infused honey. Just imagine how that will taste. A precaution that I hadn't noted, I think, was it can interfere with some thyroid conditions. So maybe that's something that you might need to look into if you have thyroid problems. Again, most of these things, any precautions are usually if you're taking in large quantities over a long period of time. Hey, here's the first one that I ever used, comfrey. When I was in Ontario, my mother used to bring me wild and medicinal plants and plants from her garden. She used to come up on the train and she used to wrap them in moss from the woods. And then she would teach me about them and plant them in my garden. And the comfrey was one of the very first ones. And It was the first plant that I used. Whoops. It was the first product that I ever made was my Comfrey Healing Cream. So many people used it for their eczema and psoriasis. So it's what got started me on my journey. So it holds a special place for me. There are different kinds of comfrey too, but I believe that the one that we have here in the Maritimes is generally all the same. So I don't think you need to have concerns about using different kinds, but it's not native here anyway. It's a perennial. Oh yeah. It used to be beside the barn. A lot of the farmers had it grow beside the barn, and you can still see them on old homesteads. See how you're going to get it? You're going to get it from a neighbor. I had a neighbor down the road last year who said, I'd love to have some comfrey growing. So come with me. I've got lots in various places, and you're welcome to have some. Now, this one is very important because you can gather the flowers, the leaves, and the roots. I've come to believe that the roots are the most medicinal parts in any plant, but that's for another time. You can harvest several times throughout the summer and harvest the roots in the spring when they contain the most allantoin, which is its healing property. One thing about the comfrey is that it's a great compost accelerator. So if you're going to cut it several times during the summer, you're probably not going to need that many leaves to make your infused oil or your salves, whatever you're going to make. So you can keep cutting it and chopping up the leaves and putting it in your composter, and it accelerates that action. So look at that, how many wonderful things can be done with it. It has 8 actions, being astringent, anti-inflammatory, antiseptic, and emollient, being good on the skin. So I always have lots of infused oils, comfrey salve, and you can make a poultice on it. Now there's some very important precautions when using comfrey. Do not take internally. If you see on Pinterest somebody talking about taking comfrey tea, just keep right on going. Do not take internally. Do not use while pregnant or breastfeeding or for small children. And one very important thing about it is that comfrey, which has a name called knit bone, because it heals so fast on broken bones, it gained that name. But do not use on deep wounds or infected cuts, because it can heal so fast that if you have infection under a cut, it will actually heal right over the skin, right on top, and keep the infection underneath. So use it more on topical things where you want an anti-inflammatory or an antiseptic. But what a wonderful plant to have. Oh, and here we are, some roses from my garden. I love picking the roses. They come from this rose bush outside my house, which was a tiny little thing when I moved here. When that starts blooming in June, I believe it is, when it starts coming out, I can go out and take 30 cups of rose blossoms off that every day for about a week. And when I go back out the next day, it looks like I never touched it. It is the most amazing, amazing bush. Well, now it's a lot of them, so I'm going to be dividing them up this spring, so I will have some for sale. It is native to the temperate and subtropical regions of North America, but it's not native here. There are only a couple that are actually native here. And I was looking on Cornhill Nurseries, their website, to see what was native. And one was called Virginiana, which is easy to remember because my daughter's name's Virginia. But this one is definitely a perennial here now. We are famous in the Maritimes for our roses. They are everywhere. So you can buy a plant if you want a specific one, or go to plant sales, or come to my place this spring. There'll be lots of these wonderful, wonderful ones for sale. I had a friend down the road who wanted a whole bunch of roses along by her business. She'd been told to put a tin can in the hole when she planted the roses. I guess the minerals in the can were supposed to help. So she did that because she read that. In about 4 years, she had the most beautiful hedge. So basically all you have to do is cut them off, stick a stick in the hole, and you'll have roses. Of course, two things that you can harvest from them, because the medicinal parts are in the flower petals and in the rose hips in the fall after the petals are done. And of course, the hips are the seeds. So you're going to get the petals when they're ripe in the summertime. I always take them off just as it's ready to fall off. I go out and gently put my hand over the flower, and if it sort of drops off in my hand, that's good. If I have to tug a little bit at it, no, I'm going to leave it for another couple of days, first of all, to enjoy. And then when the hips are ripe in the fall, when they're nice and red, you don't want them green and raw. So it actually has 5 actions: analgesic, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, astringent, and nervine. Again, many of the same ones. What can you use it for? Oh, infused honey. Yes, I have infused rose petal honey. It's so good in tea. And infused vinegar. If you're into making your own vinegars and oil and vinegars, experiment. I dehydrate and powder the leaves and use it in a mask that I make and have in my shop. Teas, lots of recipes for using it in tea. Syrup, that's been a famous one for a long time. During World War II, when we didn't have many sources of vitamin C, I'm back from the area where we got one orange a year, and that was in our Christmas stocking. And so our mothers made rosehip syrup, and that was our vitamin C. And you can do that too. And you can use the tincture, which is so gentle. And you know, this plant has no precautions. What a wonderful plant to have. And you're wondering, why am I talking about a rose bush? Why not some of the other ones? Because you can see all the actions, all the ways that you can use this plant. I know you're probably thinking that here's a nice blip. You're probably wondering why echinacea. You're probably wondering why echinacea is not on this list, or you think it's upcoming. Purple coneflower, because everybody knows it and you get your medicine from it. Well, the reason is because echinacea, the medicinal part, is the roots. And you wait until you see the scrawny little roots, and they're not deep. So you would have to plant, let them grow, dig your plant up, take those scrawny little roots to do something with. It would take about 50 echinacea roots to equal one of the comfrey roots. So there, That's why we're not going to talk about echinacea. I want you to have plants that are easy to use, easy to grow, and you can see all the different actions that they have. The last one is elderberry. So I'm suggesting that if you have a family and you're looking to, over long term, to have medicine in your yard and in your fields, that you get an elderberry bush. It is a Sambucus nigra, is the one that we have here. There are different ones, different colors, different names. Make sure it's that one. It's native to Europe, and a lot of us, I never knew that when I was growing up, but it is a perennial, and you can buy the shrubs quite easily. For that, you're going to gather the flowers and then the fruit. So you want to make sure that you balance out what you take. There's so many elderberry blossom cordials and all kinds of exotic things to do with the flowers. So, but don't harvest them all if you want to have some fruit. So take what you need and then let the rest ripen. It has 6 actions. Your antiviral, okay, we know about that, or analgesic, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and immune booster. So you can see it has a couple of different ones. You can use in teas or syrup or in tincture. The elderberry tincture is an amazing thing over the last year. Everybody's got excited about elderberry because of the many properties that it has that's good with our colds and flus. So I find that if I'm thinking of getting a cold, if I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh no, I think I'm getting a cold. I grab the elderberry tincture. I take about half a dropper full. A couple hours later, come back with another dropper full. A few hours later, some more. And by supper time, I'll go, oh, I never got a cold. Right now, they're saying that it will shorten the length of a cold. But my experience is that if that first cough, when you just get that feeling in your head or your throat, then if you take the tincture right then and try some syrup, have a cup of tea, then hey, it's not going to take hold if your immune system is good. Precaution, do not eat the raw berries. I think I had read that one probably before I ate the raw berries. They're so good, and I was picking the berries off the stems. Oh, and the best way to do that is you take the stems off the branch. You don't pick the berries off. Pick the stem off the branch, and then put them in a bag. Put them in the freezer until you're ready to use them. Once they're frozen, take the bag out of the freezer and they'll just fall off. It's such an easy way. And also you don't get all squishy on your fingers, but that's the way. They come off fast, or just jiggle the bag around and the elderberries will fall right off. So, but they're really good tasting. So while doing a few bucketfuls of the berries, I started nibbling on them as I was doing it. I probably didn't realize how many I ate. I probably ate a cupful of the raw berries, and a few hours later, I threw them up. So word to the wise, don't eat the raw berries in any form, because they have, they're just not good for you. I won't tell you why. There's several ways that medicinal herbs can be used easily once you learn the methods. So you've learned some things about the herbs, how to grow them, some properties of them, how to harvest them. Make sure you have these sheets, that you do develop a binder that you can start collecting this information, and that you have the pertinent information. So you're not collecting the wrong part of the plant, or you just get overwhelmed. So the first way is teas, and we're going to do a whole session on teas. And this is one of the best ways and the simplest ways to get the benefit of teas. By having a variety of dry teas on hand, you can have many kinds of healing teas for your family and you all year round. These are my lavender blue balm and my kickback evening. Now, if you are buying teas in tea bags, take apart one of those tea bags, even if it's a medicinal one that you're buying from whoever, whatever, off the shelf. Take it apart and look at what's inside. And then look at these photos. The volatile oils in the plants that have the actions are released when it is, first of all, when it is crushed, and secondly, when it goes into the water. You will find them crushed so fine in most herbal tea bags that it's almost like dust. Same with black teas. So here you will see the pieces. And if you were just to put your hand into that lemon balm and chamomile, the aroma that would come out is amazing because you are releasing the volatile oils that are in the teas. And if you start, like I have cupboards and cupboards full of these things, but just gathering and drying, you don't have to think, what am I going to do first? What am I going to do with it first? Like I say to Lydia, nothing. But I am going to gather all these things and dry them. I have a session in the fall on drying herbs, which is another topic. These are the tinctures, and these are the easiest ways of gathering, of taking medication, because it is the best way to get medicine from a plant through infusion in alcohol for approximately a month. So it's simple to administer and has very little alcohol after the extraction. I hear there's more in a banana than there is in a bottle of these. So they can be taken as is or combined. See the feverfew one up there on the shelf, that is for migraines. If you take it on a regular basis, it will cut down on your migraines. So they are so easy to make and to administer. They're just the dried plant in the herb for a month. That is called the simple method. There are two methods that herbalists use. Some use the folk or simple method, and that's what I'm using right now. And then there are ones that go for a plant to alcohol ratio where everything is measured out. I might try some of that soon. And then if for some reason you can't have the alcohol, or if you're wanting to administer something to children, there are glycerides. And that's where we're doing the same method, but using an all vegetable glycerin. And there's a session on that in which we will talk about how to make each one. Well, and here's the final one. These are the salves. So before you run for that polysporin or Vicks, which is a petroleum product, learn how to make a simple salve from your garden. No petroleum products here. You can easily make a few in an afternoon to cover many situations, and I'm going to teach you how to do that. It's a very simple formula for making salves. So if you gather some and dry some of your plants and just infuse them in oil, again, for about a month or two, then you will have it handy. In the meantime, I have all the infused oils, excuse me, that you ever want. Probably about, 30 kinds at least of the infused oils. Because the reason for that is when I look at that chart, that plant identification chart, I look at what can be done with it. So if I bring in If I bring in, let's see, elderberry. If I go gather some elderberry, then I'm going to freeze the berries. Then I'm going to get them off. Then I'm going to make a tincture. So I make sure that I have alcohol on hand to do that. Then I might want to make a syrup. So I have to be ready to make a syrup. So I make sure that I have all the products necessary. And then that's why I look and see, do I use it dried or do I use it? What way can I use it? So I'm going to talk through all those things and make a simple salve, give you the recipe, and show you how to do all kinds of ones. That salve with the first aid salve, the trauma salve, that's a photo of my mom in about 1930. And most of my products have photos of my family on them, going right back to my great-grandmother Margaret. And I find that they really help me understand the plants and carry on my journey. So watch for all the different courses as they come up. They'll be on the Facebook page, Tansy Lane Herb Farm. There are other ways that you can keep in touch. You can join the Tansy Lane Club on Facebook for a deeper look at herbs, and I'll be putting more information on there. You can check out tansylane.ca as we revamp the site. It's all coming new, and promote online products as well as in our shop at 490 Albert Mines Road. And if you have any inquiries or just want to get in touch or would like any worksheets that I have mentioned or information, just give me a call, send me a message through my ExploreNet, and I'm happy to talk about herbs anytime, any day. So thank you so much for joining in, and don't forget, keep in touch. I want to hear how things are going with you.